Gentle sunlight streamed into a corner of the upscale residential area. In the spacious single-family home in Wayzata, a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota, Melissa Parker was ironing her daughter Katie's school uniform. "Mom, when I grow up, I'm definitely going to be a doctor." Katie smiled as she played with her stethoscope, examining her stuffed animals on the living room sofa. Melissa returned her smile warmly. Melissa had once been a successful accounting manager at a major corporation. Though she was skilled with numbers and deeply trusted by her subordinates, she had to put her career on hold when Katie began experiencing health issues at age 6. Now she works part-time in administration while staying active in her Presbyterian church. She rises at 5 a.m. for prayer time, deeply trusts her husband David, and devotes herself to caring for her precious daughter. Her husband, David Parker, serves as the head of research and development at the global pharmaceutical company LifeTech, leading new drug development projects. As an elite executive earning $300,000 annually, he was envied by neighbors as an ideal husband and father. He always made time to practice baseball with Katie at the park on holidays, and his attentive listening during Sunday sermons made him a model father figure at church. And Katie, the family's treasure, is a fourth grader at St. Mary's Elementary School. The bright and intelligent 10-year-old is popular in her class. Despite struggling with unexplained health issues that often keep her from school, she maintains her dream of becoming a doctor who can help sick children. She respects her father, deeply trusts her mother, and has a kind heart. She never forgets her classmates' birthdays and makes a habit of giving them handmade cards. Dr. Roberts, the family's primary physician, is a veteran doctor with 30 years of experience as the head of pediatric surgery at St. Mary's General Hospital. Known for his strong ethical principles, he participates in Christian medical volunteer work and hosts the hospital's annual Christmas charity events. With his gentle personality, young patients affectionately call him Uncle Robbie. The Parker family was well regarded in the community as a devout Christian household that regularly attended church. Thanks to David's high income, they lived comfortably in a 4-bedroom home in the Wayzata district, cherishing their family time on holidays. The spacious kitchen always smelled of homemade cookies, and family photos adorned the mantel above the living room fireplace. They participated in weekly Sunday church community activities and valued holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas as important opportunities to strengthen family bonds. On weekends, Melissa and Katie made it their routine to stop by the local Starbucks. Melissa would order organic coffee while Katie got hot chocolate, sharing precious mother-daughter moments. On their way home, they would visit the farmer's market for fresh organic vegetables, often sharing some with elderly neighbors, a thoughtful gesture they never forgot. At Whole Foods Market, they carefully selected ingredients with minimal additives, prioritizing their family's health in their dietary choices. On holidays, the whole family would sometimes visit the Mall of America. Katie would peek into the medical books section at the bookstore, her eyes sparkling as she'd say, "Once I can read these, I'll definitely be able to help sick children." Her parents gently watched over their daughter's pure dream. One day, Melissa was preparing dinner in the kitchen. The sound of her knife chopping organic vegetables echoed through the air, a typical weekday at 6 p.m. However, that peaceful daily routine was about to shatter in an instant. Katie. Melissa's eyes fell upon her daughter collapsing in the living room. Her homework notebook scattered across the floor, pencils rolling away. When she touched Katie's forehead, pale and covered in cold sweat, she gasped at the abnormal heat. "Hang in there, Katie." With trembling hands, Melissa called for an ambulance. As soon as she hung up, she contacted her husband David. "David, Katie's collapsed. We're heading to St. Mary's." Her husband's panicked voice came through the receiver. "Wait. Go to LifeTech's affiliated hospital. But this one's the closest. Just do it." At that moment, the doorbell rang. The paramedics had arrived. "She has a high fever. We need to transport her immediately." The veteran paramedic assessed the situation calmly. "Mommy, I'm scared," Katie whispered in a small voice as she was placed on the stretcher. Holding her hand, Melissa forced a smile. "It's okay. Mommy's right here with you." The ambulance siren echoed through the quiet residential area. Melissa prayed continuously in her heart. "Lord, please protect my daughter." At St. Mary's General Hospital's emergency room, Dr. Roberts immediately began treatment. "There's severe abdominal tenderness. We need a CT scan right away." In the treatment room, nurses efficiently prepared for the examination. At that moment, David, who had rushed to the hospital, was behaving strangely. "Let's move her to another hospital." "My company's." "Mr. Parker," Dr. Roberts interrupted with a firm voice. "Your daughter's condition is critical. We don't have time to move her." David's anxiety was evident. His usual composure had vanished, and beads of sweat dotted his forehead. Dr. Roberts's expression changed dramatically after seeing the CT results. "Prepare for emergency surgery immediately. We suspect acute peritonitis. It's a race against time." In the hallway to the operating room, Katie showed an anxious expression. "Mom, will I still be able to become a doctor?" "Of course. You'll definitely become a wonderful doctor." Melissa smiled strongly while holding back tears. The operating room doors closed, leaving a tense atmosphere. Even Dr. Roberts's usually calm expression showed deep concern. About 30 minutes into the surgery, the operating room door suddenly burst open. "Stop the surgery." David had rushed into the operating room in his street shoes. He was nothing like his usual composed self as head of R&D. Dr. Roberts raised his voice sternly. "This is an operating room. Leave immediately." But it was too late. The foreign object appeared on the screen. When David saw it, the blood drained from his face. The entire operating room fell into a heavy silence. "This appears to be a monitoring chip for human experiments." Dr. Roberts's calm voice broke the silence. The medical team carefully began documenting the evidence. The size, location, and shape of the foreign object. All the details would soon reveal shocking facts. The hospital's ethics committee was called for an emergency meeting, and police involvement was being considered. Outside the operating room, Melissa sat slumped against the wall. A heavy atmosphere hung over the conference room at St. Mary's General Hospital. 48 hours had passed since the surgery, and a joint investigation by the hospital's ethics committee and police was about to begin. Morning sunlight streaming through the windows illuminated the evidence bags on the table. "This chip is quite sophisticated technology," Detective Murphy from the Criminal Investigation Division observed while examining the small metallic piece giving off a cold light. Dr. Roberts responded with a deep sigh. "It's a special device for human experimentation. In my 30 years of experience, I've never seen anything like it." "Any connection to pharmaceutical companies?" "We're investigating that possibility." The chip serial number strongly suggests a connection to Lifetech's R&D department. In another room at the hospital, Melissa had broken down crying. Sarah, the head nurse, gently held her shoulders. "I can't believe it. David, that he would." With trembling hands, she clutched a photo of Katie sleeping in her hospital room. The surgery had been successful, and her daughter's condition was stable. However, Melissa's heart was being torn apart by the long battle that was about to begin. The police investigation progressed at a surprising pace. A forced investigation of Lifetech began, and interviews with R&D department staff were conducted. Horrifying facts emerged one after another from the testimonies of David's subordinates. Director Parker was desperately trying to hide the failure of the new drug development project. Jessica, a young researcher, testified through tears. With increasing pressure to cut budgets, he said we couldn't proceed with development without human trial data. Meanwhile, Melissa had begun her own investigation. While searching her husband's study, she discovered a hidden USB drive. It contained detailed records of changes in Katie's condition, as if their daughter had been treated as a test subject. Lord. Late at night, Melissa prayed in the church prayer room. Pastor Michael quietly stood by her side. "Melissa, you are a strong mother. God will surely show you the way." At Lifetech headquarters, an emergency board meeting was being held. Richardson, David's superior and head of R&D, harshly reprimanded his subordinate. "Why did you take such a dangerous risk? The company's reputation will be ruined." However, beneath his words, there was a hint of panic as he tried to conceal his own involvement. Even more shocking facts emerged during the investigation. Katie wasn't the only one. Similar chips were discovered in at least 5 other children. All of them had been complaining of unexplained health issues. "This is going to be huge," Detective Murphy told the public relations officer preparing for the press conference. "It could become the biggest scandal in the pharmaceutical industry." David sat with slumped shoulders. His once dignified appearance was gone. "Why did you put the chip in your daughter?" In response to the detective's question, David began answering in a trembling voice. "Research was everything to me." "Please explain specifically." "With consecutive failures in new drug development, and the budget about to be cut, my subordinates would be left stranded. If we just had the data, if the clinical trials just succeeded." Melissa watched his confession from the monitor room. She had no more tears left. She only felt a great void spreading inside her heart. "Mom, when is Dad coming home?" Whenever Katie asked in her hospital room, Melissa was at a loss for words. She still couldn't find the courage to tell the truth to her daughter's innocent eyes. The investigation continued into even darker depths. The involvement of LifeTech executives was revealed one after another, developing into a scandal that shook the medical world. The illegal human experiments had been conducted systematically. An emergency meeting was held at the Medical Association to consider disciplining the involved doctors. It was discovered that many doctors who had cooperated with the chip implant surgeries had been enticed by research funding. "The credibility of our industry has been severely damaged," the Medical Association president stated with a stern expression. "However, we must take this opportunity to fundamentally reconsider our approach to medical ethics." The media continued to report updates on the case daily. Beloved daughter used as test subject, inhumane acts by pharmaceutical company. Melissa couldn't bear to look at the headlines splashed across newspapers and television. However, a new determination was beginning to sprout in her heart. This case couldn't end as just a tragedy. The darkness in the medical world needed to be brought to light to ensure such mistakes would never be repeated. "Katie, your dream will definitely come true," Melissa vowed while gently stroking her sleeping daughter's cheek. "But before that, Mommy has something she needs to do." 6 months after the case came to light, the trial day finally arrived. Many reporters packed the gallery, along with medical professionals and pharmaceutical industry representatives. In the front row sat Melissa's church members. Pastor Michael was quietly praying. Judge Sarah Watson entered the courtroom. With 30 years of experience, she was known as a specialist in medical litigation. Prosecutor James Morrison began his opening statement in a calm voice. The defendant, David Parker, subjected 6 children, including his own daughter, to illegal human experiments. A shock ran through the courtroom. The prosecutor then displayed color photographs on the screen, pictures of the scars where chips had been implanted in the children. Sobs could be heard from the gallery. "This is not just an illegal experiment," the prosecutor's voice grew stronger. "This is an act of selling one's beloved child for money." David remained motionless in the defendant's seat, his head bowed. Any trace of his former dignity as head of R&D had completely vanished. As witness testimony began, Dr. Roberts took the stand as the first witness. "When I discovered the chip, I was deeply shocked as a physician. In my 30 years of experience, I have never witnessed such an inhumane act." Next, former LifeTech researchers testified. Their testimonies revealed the full extent of the organizational crime. Budget cut pressures, instructions to fabricate data, and cover-ups of illegal experiments. Everything had been done in the name of profit. "We needed human trial data for new drug development," former researcher Thomas testified in a trembling voice. "But proper clinical trials would take too long." That's when Director Parker. During the lunch recess, Melissa sighed deeply by a window in the hallway. The mothers of other victims approached her. "Our children too, the same thing." The mothers embraced and cried together. Their shared pain had forged a strong bond between them. In the afternoon session, Melissa's testimony finally began. Until that day, I deeply trusted my husband, she began, speaking in a trembling voice but with a resolute attitude. I believed he was a husband who prayed at church and cherished his family. But from the witness stand, she could see Katie crying in the courtroom. Melissa continued with strong determination. I want to reveal the truth about this case, so that no child will ever be used as a test subject again. Finally, David took the witness stand as the last witness. He who had maintained silence until now finally opened his mouth. My obsession with research clouded my judgment, he began in a hoarse voice. I believed that successful drug development would save many patients, but that's just an excuse. I hurt my beloved daughter. I have failed as a father and as a human being. His words brought complete silence to the courtroom. For the first time, Melissa felt her husband's genuine remorse. On the day of the verdict, the courtroom was packed with even more people. I hereby sentence the defendant David Parker to 7 years in prison, the judge's voice resonated heavily. Furthermore, I order LifeTech to pay a total of $50 million in damages to the victims. After the verdict, at the press conference, Melissa spoke of her new determination. I want this verdict to be not an end, but a beginning. We, the families of the victims, have decided to establish a new organization to protect medical ethics. Her words were reported by many media outlets and would create significant ripples in the medical world. A few days later, Melissa and Katie faced David in the visitation room. "Papa," Katie called out in a small voice. "Katie, I'm so sorry." For the first time, genuine tears fell from David's eyes. "Your crime is serious," Melissa said quietly. "But I believe that showing Katie your true remorse and rehabilitation will be important for her future." As she watched her husband being taken to prison, Melissa was firmly determined to not let this case be in vain, and to restore true ethics to the medical world. Katie squeezed her mother's hand. "I still want to be a doctor." "Yes, you'll definitely become a wonderful doctor," Melissa nodded firmly. "This is not the end. It's the beginning of a new battle." A week after the verdict, Melissa held the first meeting of the Victims' Families Association. Together with families gathered from across America, activities toward creating new guidelines for medical ethics were about to begin. And at St. Mary's Hospital, learning from this case, a new ethics committee was established. Centered around Dr. Roberts, efforts to protect patients' rights were strengthened. Justice had been won. However, this was also the beginning of a new battle. For a better future in medicine, Melissa and others' fight would continue. 7 years later, morning sunlight streamed into the lecture hall at the University of Minnesota Medical School. The podium displayed the lecture title, Medical Ethics and Human Rights: Challenges Facing Modern Medicine. My experience taught me what the medical world needs. Melissa Parker's voice was filled with conviction. Protecting patients' rights. This isn't just a slogan. It's the earnest wish of each and every one of us. Among the audience sat a young female doctor in a white coat. Katie Parker had begun her path as a resident in pediatrics. Having skipped grades to enter medical school at 17, she was already gaining attention as a promising young doctor. After the lecture, mother and daughter shared lunch in the hospital cafeteria. "Mom, your lecture today was really good." "Thank you. But there's still so much more to do." Melissa now travels across the United States giving lectures as the representative of the Patients' Rights Protection Association. The 7 years had given her a new mission and strength. "Oh, by the way, Dad's going to become an instructor for the prison rehabilitation program," Katie said. During his imprisonment, David had studied medical ethics and even earned a doctorate. After his release, he planned to engage in ethics education for young researchers, using his own mistakes as a lesson. "So many things have changed since that incident," Melissa said, gazing out the window. Indeed, the medical world had transformed significantly. After Lifetecha's collapse, new ethical standards were established in the pharmaceutical industry. All clinical trial data became strictly monitored by third-party organizations, and various systems were put in place to protect patients' rights. The lives of those involved in the incident had also changed dramatically. Lifetecha's CEO received a 12-year prison sentence and was still serving time. The head of R&D received a 10-year sentence and was now engaged in community service after his release. Other executives received sentences ranging from 5 to 8 years. The company itself went bankrupt due to massive compensation payments, leading to major restructuring in the pharmaceutical industry. Many of the involved doctors had their medical licenses permanently revoked, with some receiving prison sentences. Their downfall left a profound lesson for the medical community. However, perhaps the person who had changed the most over these 7 years was Melissa herself. She established the Victims' Families Association, which spread across the United States. She gave lectures nationwide and appeared on television. As a result of her continuous advocacy for the importance of medical ethics, new legislation began moving forward in Congress. The new law, known as the Melissa Parker Act, significantly strengthened patient rights protection and ethical standards in medical research. With this law's enactment, illegal human experimentation would be strictly regulated. That evening, Melissa visited the prison. "You'll be released next week." She faced David through the visiting room glass. The 7 years had changed both his appearance and his inner self profoundly. "Yes. I believe my atonement has only just begun." David's voice no longer carried a trace of his former arrogance. "I'm truly proud that Katie became a doctor. She chose a different path from mine." "Yes. She'll be a good doctor. A truly good doctor who understands patients' feelings." Melissa spoke quietly. That night, returning home, Melissa opened a diary in her study. Started 7 years ago, this diary contained her struggles, hopes, and new determinations. On its cover was written, "What I found after losing a loved one, a record of medicine and human rights." Next month, this diary would be published as a book. It tells the story of a mother's grief and the hope that emerged from it. On the weekend, Melissa and Katie stopped by Starbucks as usual. "Hey Mom," Katie said, holding her hot chocolate. "I've decided to specialize in treating children with particularly difficult illnesses in pediatrics. Because I understand how those children feel." Melissa saw deep determination in her daughter's eyes. There shone a strength to overcome past pain and create a new future. As she watched the sunset through the cafe window, Melissa smiled quietly, sensing the dawn of a new era. This story doesn't end here. A new chapter was just about to begin. "That's right, Katie. I know you can do it." Mother and daughter held hands. Their challenge would continue tomorrow. For a better future in medicine. And to create a world where all patients' rights are protected. Outside, a gentle spring breeze was blowing.